Hey guys, I'm going to take a quick look at our next project here. It is a 1972 CB450. I bought this probably about 10 years ago. It was non-running, kind of rough shape, pretty complete, minus the seat. And actually the tank is what I was running on my 71 CB450 for a while. Before I converted it back to its stock form. This was actually my first vintage bike, so I bought it just to have something cheap to tinker on, something that if I broke I wouldn't be too upset. So I didn't pay a whole lot for it. The engine wasn't seized, but it had at some point gotten water down into the cylinders, so they were all kind of screwed up. So I actually replaced the cylinders and rings, possibly pistons, I can't recall, with new old stock. So we got it running. This was actually my first engine rebuild as well. It looks relatively clean still. So I had decided, since it wasn't really, at least in my opinion, worth restoring, I decided to do kind of a cafe racer thing to it. So the frame you're seeing in the front end as well is actually from a 73, because as it turned out, the original 72 frame was bent, so I didn't know how to properly fix it, or even if I should fix it. So I was able to track a titled frame, straight frame most importantly, down from a guy in Texas. So I bought that on eBay, had it shipped up, bought a few other components from the same bike. So I guess technically when this gets put on the road, it'll be registered as a 73. So this frame is straight. It did run. By the time I got it running, I had kind of lost interest in the project. I was kind of getting more into the stock bikes and kind of appreciating them a little bit more. So I actually gave this to my brother several years ago, and we did a little bit of work on it, but it kind of has been sitting for the last few years. And now that I've got the Superhawk project finished up, I asked if he was interested in having the kids and I kind of wrap this one up for him. He said sure. He's got other stuff going on, so I made the 5-hour trip up to the area I'm originally from, where he's still at, picked this thing up, and here it sits back in my house again. So we kind of have a plan for it. Again, my taste of change, his taste of change a little bit. It's got some decent parts on it, some cheaper parts. It's got a 2-into-1 exhaust that I had put together with some mandrel bends and just an MGO shorty muffler on there. I don't know if we're going to keep that or not, or if I may take a crack at doing a nicer one. So we'll worry about that when we get there. But the first thing we need to do is to make sure this engine still runs. So I'm going to grab a battery, hook this up to the fuel bottle, see if we can get it to run here. It's, like I said, it ran when I gave it to him, but it's been sitting for, I'll bet, at least 3 years, maybe longer. So rear sets. Make it awkward. Ooh. That's going to be loud. Why don't you stand over here? Because you're right behind this very noisy muffler. If it's That is loud. We got to do something about that.
Look what I put on. That's how loud it is.
Is it too loud for you? That was a welcome surprise. I really didn't expect the bike to fire up quite so easy. Timing's a little bit off. We're getting a little bit of popping back through the carburetor. Huge exhaust leak, but turns out I never even checked to see if these were tightened up when I started it up. So these are really loose. That's why the exhaust was leaking out of here. But the good news is no fluid leaking from anywhere. All the trash you see on here is just from sitting in my brother's garage for the last 3 or 4 years. So that wipes off. I thought it was oil at first, but it's just some kind of grime or overspray from something, who knows. But so I've gone ahead and thrown the original tank on it, just to kind of, I'd Photoshop some mock-ups. We're trying to figure out what kind of seat we're going to run. I think we're leaning towards one of Tough Side's fully upholstered cafe seats, and then I've gone ahead with this in place, measured out. It looks like they've got a couple different sizes, 23 inch and 25 inch. So 23 will put the end of the hoop right here, 25 2 inches further back. So either way we're going to be cutting this and sliding it forward. It's just a matter of determining how much, and it's looking like that's the next step, because that's going to kind of determine. I sat on this thing the other day, and with the pegs this far back, it is so uncomfortable. You're basically laying down, which I'm sure for an actual race bike is fine. Cruising around town, that is not fine. It's going to get uncomfortable real quick. So the seat position will determine how far forward we need to move the rear sets, and kind of dictate a lot of stuff. Shift linkage, brake linkage on the other side. So I think we've got to figure that out next. I'm going to actually run the Red Wing shocks I took off my 450. That's going to give us a little bit more height in the back, but it's not so much that the chain's going to rub right here. We've still got a little bit of rim. But the one thing I've never liked about the 450 is it just looks a little droopy in the back end. I think the shocks are just a hair too short for it. Even now on the center stand, you can kind of see I'm holding this kind of horizontal with the ground, and you can see the back end's drooping down a little bit. And that's not the camera tipped. That's just the way these bikes are. Comfortable, but a little bit of sag in the back end. And from what it looks like, the Tough Side seats actually kick up a little bit in the back. So if that's the case, once we get it, assuming we go with that one, I'll actually kick the hoop up to follow that. That may give it the illusion that it's sitting a little bit higher in the back, but we'll have to wait and see. I'm starting kind of a list of kind of safety related items first. I noticed when I was putting this thing on the trailer a week or so ago, there's a lot of slop. I don't know if I can pick it up here. That's the swing arm bushings. You're seeing that movement back and forth there. Ton of slop there. So we'll replace those. So quite a bit more little detail stuff. Probably going to replace all the cables, all the brake hoses. Clutch cable feels really terrible. I mean, part of that is just this wacky way it's routed here when we mocked it up originally, but we'll replace that with a newer one. Some of these, you can see the tack cable here is cracked at the top like they often do, so we'll probably just replace them all. I think we're going to run a different headlight, so what I may wind up doing, just so I don't have to worry about trying to cram all these wires into some kind of aftermarket headlight, I think I'm going to do a wiring harness similar to the CB360, where most of the connections are actually on the frame kind of backbone underneath the tank. So most of the stuff, instead of everything routing into the back of the headlight, the majority of the wires actually go the opposite direction. And then the Honda, the tunnel here on the 450 has quite a bit of room, so I don't think that's going to be an issue. If it was, we'll figure something out, but that'll alleviate that, give us a little bit more options. I'd like to look at options for clip-ons that have a little bit of a rise to them. Again, just sitting on this thing, it is super uncomfortable, so I'd hate to go to all this trouble and then my brother not ride it much because the thing's uncomfortable. So he's writing the checks on this one, so ultimately it's up to him, but I'm gonna recommend something with maybe a 1.5 inch, 2 inch rise on it, and maybe just pull it back a little bit. So other than that, the tires are trash. We're gonna replace those, obviously. So we'll do some kind of little battery tray under the seat here. Eventually I think we're gonna eliminate any kind of side cover, so we'll knock these tabs off, but that kind of stuff's going to come last. We may run the Mikunis that I had on the other bike for a while. I'll see what he wants to do there. These were fine. I actually had these on my 450 for a while, and just to make sure they were tuned before I put them on this one, and we tried to tune for this 2-in-1 exhaust. So carburetors are good. It's just a matter of, like, he wants to run the pod filters, and it's a lot easier to tune those Mikunis for pods than it is these. I know it can be done, but I'm kind of looking for the simpler option here. Plus those are already kind of dialed in from the other 450, so there shouldn't be a whole lot of work to do there. But we need to kind of get the structural and safety stuff first before we worry about those kind of details. So I'm going to try something a little bit different with this series. I'm going to try to do shorter videos, less of me rambling, with the exception of this one. I kind of had to explain what we're doing here. So thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.